you have nowhere else to turn. Intensity will never forgive you. Integrity will never accept you. Intelligence will never look upon you with anything but horror and disgust. I am your only future, and my path, your only path. And walk the path of a champion they did, as the Avengers did simply walk into Mordor and claim yet another coveted DoD title from the claws of Mount Phoenix. We're back. We took a little break due to the holidays, but knew that you'd all miss us, so do not despair, we have returned. Now welcome in once again to the dungeon of the Doctors of Doom, where I am your host, Alex the Shark Sparks, and it is certainly not my first choice, but credit where credit is due, so I am joined this week by Mitch, the Dungeon Daddy Black, and of course our producer, who is just loving fantasy football right now, Vinny, runner-up Santucci. Say hello to all the confused subscribers out there who see our videos show back up after a 2-week absence, fellas.
Hello. What's up, dungeon dwellers? You guys enjoying me in wallowing in misery?
Avengerettes.
Yeah, so as I said, it's been a minute. We now just finished up week 18, and this championship game happened in week 16. But real quick recap, as you can see, Avengers took down Team Phoenix. Vinny got off to a great start with Jalen Hurts getting hurt, who's still hurt, by the way. Has not played since week 16. Has not. I think he finally cleared concussion protocol today. Is that true? I think I heard. So he's having a rough go of it. Obviously, Condre Miller, someone you just had to pick up off waivers. That didn't go well for you. So yeah, not your finest hour there, Vin. But Saquon once again carried, and so did that kicker. Mitch finally listened to us and benched Tucker, who gets 12, and Audrey goes off for 20. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to say about your championship? I'll shut up because this is your match. So.
No, I mean, I honestly, as soon as Hurts went down, my investment into this match was pretty much over. It was like literally the first. So he was on the 10 a.m. kickoff, so the first set of kickoffs, first drive. I'm literally walking out of church. I'm like, oh sweet, he's got 40 rushing yards, 11 passing yards, first and goal. I'm like watching it on my phone, and then like I get in the car, and then all of a sudden I get a notification that Hurts is out for the game, and that his stats hadn't changed. So it was a long Sunday like that. I literally the first 10 minutes of football on Championship Sunday, I was just like ruined. So it was a long day. But hey, you know what? Props to Mitch. He had the best team in the league in my opinion. So like I didn't feel bad about it by any means.
Well, I'll start off by prefacing it with I think it's been 9 weeks in a row I've scored 90 points or higher and I haven't lost. So I was on kind of on a heater. But the individually for this matchup, funny part for me is like Kittle and Laporta matched up. Your number one Broncos versus my number three Steelers matched up. Our second running backs matched up better than I thought because Chase Brown didn't do a heck of a lot better than Kendrick Miller. Even if you started one of your other running backs, like there's no world in this where I don't win because of Hurts. And the thing is, what makes it funny and come kind of full circle is 2 years ago, Ertz took a championship away from me. I'm not saying I would have beaten you, Vinny, and your historic team, but Ertz took a championship away from me, and then he gave me one. And then the same thing with Josh Allen. I drafted Lamar Jackson, and I remember Vinny specifically saying in that draft, Mitch is such a homer for guys who give him championships. And that's true. I shouldn't have drafted Lamar and let Josh Allen fall all the way back to the end of the second round so Matt can pair him with Derrick Henry, and that gave Matt a championship. So it kind of came full circle for me where Jalen Hurts took a championship from me, gave one back to me. Josh Allen took a championship from me and gave one back to me. So it's like I don't mind how it all end up because I have forgiven Josh Allen and Ertz for over the last 3 years. But then he also said like it's going to come down to Jerry Judy, our second wide receiver. Brian Thomas smashed any of my wide receivers. So it's like it's just so far from how we thought it was going to play out. It just ended up coming down to Ertz getting hurt because if he doesn't, then
I gotta interject. I don't like. Yeah, it hurt Vinny, but like the quarterbacks weren't a part of this matchup, right? Your guys' quarterbacks combined for 17. Quarterbacks didn't matter in the Super Bowl. What mattered was Barkley's 27, Aubrey's 20. Like
yeah, but if Vinny's Ertz gets his average, which is 26, this game is because Allen got 13. Like the only reason I win is because a kicker got me 20 fantasy points. Like,
right, but I'm just saying like all the talk about like it's got to be all about the QBs. Well, the QBs in the Super Bowl didn't do jack. So I'm just
Yeah, they
saying.
didn't do it. They didn't do it in the Super Bowl, but they got me to a Super Bowl. So like, I don't
Well, I
get to
think
the Super
Saquon got
Bowl.
to the Super Bowl, but yeah.
Well, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, so if you look at it, Saquon's better scorings is when I was 3-3-1, as opposed to if you look at my 9 week winning streak, it's all Josh Allen getting 50. So like he did get like week 12 with Saquon Barkley is good week for sure. But other than that, in the last 9 weeks, it's all been Josh Allen carrying my team. So I know he had a bad thing, and I know I'm just talking about QBs, but let's pretend Josh Allen had his normal game of 13 points because that was going to happen regardless of him getting hurt or not. But Ertz getting four does not. Ertz, if you add 20 points to his, makes it more realistic. And then it came down to like kicker and second. And then the other thing is Gus Edwards ended up doing better than Chase Brown. So it's just nothing how I thought. And then it's just it came down to Vinny and I deciding on our defenses and Hurts getting hurt. That's kind of came down to. And my question is, I would want to know would Nolan have scored enough points to beat Vinny's 76? I'm sure he would have, right?
I have no idea. I
So I get to
also
play the bad guy again.
I
Then
don't
no,
know if you remember I kept saying that, like, because, like, obviously the only reason I wasn't in the Super Bowl was because I benched Aaron Jones against Luis, so not to really harp on that. I kept telling you, Mitch, please outscore me. Please outscore me. So I added up how many points I would have scored in week 16. I would have scored 99, not counting my tight end. My tight end did not play due to injury. I would have had to grab a waiver wire tight end. If I grabbed one that scored 8 or more, I would have tied or beat you. If I grabbed one that scored less than that, I would have lost. And if you look at, like, the top 4 tight ends, it was like a 50-50. So I don't know what would have happened. I mean, obviously, look, I lost. It's on me. But, like, I was really hoping you would have scored a few more points just to guarantee that I would have not won this whole thing. But yeah, it is what it is. We'll move on from this because this is, like I said, this is 3 weeks ago football wise. But I just wanted to touch base on it.
I
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say one more thing. I think one of the things that softens the blow for me, and I think it's kind of funny, like Mitch said, rolling with the defenses. I talked all week how I was like, I literally had the Falcons on my scout team, even though I picked up the Colts and dropped them like the Falcon. I didn't. I picked the Colts as like my fourth choice waiver defense because I didn't want to pick the Falcons and then everybody say that I was just picking up a defense to screw Mitch. I just didn't want that narrative, so I was just like picked up one that I thought could be startable. But the Falcons were my number one all week, and then I was like, God, the Broncos are number one by like 40 points. I have to roll with them. So I did. They get 4 points, and then I think Mitch had texted me separately about Kendre Miller. I didn't love Kendre Miller. He's like, oh, I would have started Ford.
Yeah, Ford or Spears would have
Ford
definitely been better
historic,
picks.
yeah, Ford historically
well, I
is
said that
not that
before
great,
we
and
started. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, go
you
on.
did, you did. No, and so I justification. It's funny. It's just bad coaching. But I was like, I thought Kendre had higher upside, and I didn't think my team was good enough matching up with Saquon Brown and Allen. Like Ford, if you ever look at the games when Chubb is out, he's like an 8 to 9 point guy after those like first 3 weeks where he blew up. He's not that good. And Tajay was supposed to split, so it makes me feel better that I also made bad coaching decisions, so it doesn't just fall on Hurts. Like I probably wouldn't change who was in there if so. Hurts would have had to score, like 31 more points than he did, so a 35 pointer. So I really don't care that much at that
The
point.
sad
Like it was.
Yeah, the sad part is I was looking at like four defenses that week, and the Falcons were like fourth. I'll be honest, like fourth or fifth on my list of order. I had three that I was going to start, including the Steelers ahead of them. So that was definitely bad coaching on my part as well. But like, all I meant with the Ford and Spears thing before Kendrick Miller is like I'm a little biased. I like Jamison Williams because he always gets the carries when Kamara's out. And also, Jameson Williams is a big cat guy, so I'm very biased. I want him to do well. If you see his latest interview where he's like, season's over, I gotta go home to my cats," and he was like being all of his Instagram is just full of cats. So I was like, I'm not starting Kendry Miller in any league when I'd rather have Jameson Williams to get the job and
Yeah.
do better.
Speaking of Williams, I asked Dakota. We were at dinner with Chris, actually, of all people, and she was saying something about NFL. I was like, name 10 NFL players right now, and she doesn't know names. She just knows descriptors, and so she calls Jamal Williams. She calls him Pokemon guy. She's like
Oh
Pokemon guy because
God.
he's always got these weird anime interviews. So shout out to Jamal Williams for being Pokemon guy and
And
being
the cat guy.
one of like five people that my wife knows in the NFL just because of his interviews.
A couple of his cats too are like the shaved cats that are all just the skin. He's a wild
So gross.
character. Well, yeah, I would have gone. I texted Vinny back to the original point. I texted Vinny beforehand. or actually, I texted Matt because Matt was wondering what and I texted Matt, obviously, don't text Vinny, but then once the game started, we just snapped the pictures and sent it. But it was like, yeah, you were right about was Allen being fired, a new play caller and all that, so it's different, but like, we don't know that yet. That's all I was saying. It's like, we don't know how the new
Yeah.
player favors Kendry versus. I mean, it looked like it the first couple weeks, but it was too risky. Jameson Williams is an actual legit bona fide running back. Like if he was on a different team besides Kamara, if he was like the backup to a much more average running back, he'd split. But he gets lost in the sauce because Kamara is just so talented. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm just happy I put up 100 points in the Super Bowl. That's kind of more. I don't care how I did it. I'm just happy that I eventually made that mark. But it was a fun season, very fun.
All right, so let's
Yeah.
moving on to we're going to touch briefly on other leagues because I know a lot of us are, we're doing a podcast about fantasy football, so clearly we play fantasy football. I'm curious, how did everyone do? Vinny and I kind of already talked about this privately in text, but we'll bring you into it, Mitch, and kind of tell everyone how many leagues are you in? How did you do in all of your leagues? Are you overall content, happy with this fantasy season, with the 2024-2025 fantasy season? Are you happy with how things turned out? Are you disappointed? How do you feel? What's your takeaway now that the regular season is over? We'll talk current news and playoffs and stuff here in just a second. But first, give me your overall vibe from this fantasy season. How do you feel? How you personally did? Were there any major pitfalls that got you, or major triumphs that you want to celebrate? I mean, obviously you made your triumph here, but what about other leagues and stuff, guys? What do you got?
No, for sure. I'll be real quick. But I won two of my three, and the one that I lost was I was 13-1. I had one, or yeah, I had one loss the whole year. I ended up losing to Jonathan Taylor in the highest scoring matchup ever in the league. And this is a league with Chris and Cameron in it. And then I ended up beating Chris for the third place match. So I had or two losses the whole year, and one of them was in the semifinals. And I scored like 40 points, but I lost by like 12 points because Jonathan Taylor had like 60 something. But to recap, I kind of either have good years or bad years as a whole because I have a serious problem with drafting the same players across leagues. I'm not very good at spreading out my picks. So like and my first two picks in every single league was Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. So I don't mind as long as my overall strategy is correct. If my overall strategy is wrong, then I have a bad year because I draft the same guys. So this year I told Chris and Austin who are drafting at my house that I'm going to go running back first round and I'm going to take the value. It's always where the value is. So when I got Justin Jefferson, he was the first wide receiver taken in the first round 2 years ago. Barkley, I think it's just all about value. You try and find value, and then you go for that. So, no joke. In my other two leagues, I went Derrick Henry first and Saquon Barkley on the turn, and I had both running backs in both leagues. So I picked 9 or 10, and Barkley was a second round pick in both those leagues. In our league, I wonder where Barkley would have fallen till in our league, how far down he would have actually fallen till because all these other leagues he went. So I just got lucky this year that I was high on two running backs that I was correct on because if you look at the running backs in the first round, there's a lot of misses. So it's just kind of like this was a good year for me because my first 2 round picks were correct. It's just any other year, if you don't have a first round or second round pick correct and you take them across all three leagues, you're in big trouble. So this is one of my better years, but whatever. I mean, any year is a good year when you win a championship in DoD. I ended up winning probably close to, I don't know how much Cameron's little brother is going to pay me out. I forget. Chris or Cameron would probably know, but made close to like 1,200 this year. And that's
Nice.
including winning a league that has $0.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Okay. So,
Nice.
so Vinny, how about you? We've kind of already talked about it, but go ahead and share your kind of your story is a little different than Mitch's, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can hear the excitement in your voice as you're asking me that question. Um, so so yeah, this was probably one of my best and worst fantasy years of all time. So I'm in three redraft leagues, so your traditional leagues, and then I have four dynasty leagues that I've kind of gotten hooked into. Um, and I made the playoffs in all seven. I was a top seed or top two seed in multiple, and so I made the semifinals in six leagues, and I made the finals in three leagues, and I have zero championships to show for it. So I went from 6 semifinals to 0 championships, and that is
That's a
statistically
tough 2 weeks.
improbable.
Yeah.
And to pair it all off, I think the answer that Alex is really looking for is in week 16. Not only do I get hammered in DoD by Mitch, but Alex simultaneously hammers me in a league where I think arguably it was 3 teams, me, this Tarno that you see on the screen, and Alex, where Tarno and I were two of the best teams. I actually looked historically, Alex. I scored the most points on a per game average than we have in the 4 year history of this league. And Tarno's lost like 2 regular season games over the last 3 years. And I lose in the semis. So I got absolutely shellacked by Alex and Mitchell in the same week. And so that hurt. Week 16, I didn't even really I was in 3 championships and I set my lineups and didn't even watch football on week 17 because after I lost to Alex and then Mitch in week 16, I just kind of gave up. Like I was so defeated. I was like, I can't handle this emotionally anymore.
Yeah, and I'll go next.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of the middle road between the two of you. Obviously, Vinny had some despair there. Mitch had some glory. Vinny's in 7 leagues. Mitch only in 3. I'm in the middle. I'm in 4 leagues. I made the playoffs in 3 of them, and I won 2 championships, including the one here in Sleeper that we're looking at now. Tarno had 2 losses this season. Both of them were to me. The most recent one being in the Super Bowl after I beat Vinny in week 16. I beat him in the Super Bowl, and like Mitch, I'm going to end up winning around. I think it's going to be like $1,300 that I'm going to win. So as far as anyone listening to us, like, why should you listen to us? Well, even though we don't always have the best records in DoD this year, I shot myself in the foot. I mean, I have a winning record, right? Even though I didn't make the playoffs, I did have a winning record. All my teams have winning records. But this year, I don't consider it a huge win because I didn't win in DoD, and this is the only league that matters to me. Like, the money's great. It's cool that I won. I care about Sleeper specifically because I beat Vinny. If it wasn't for Vinny, I wouldn't care about that league at all. In fact, I don't know anyone else in that league besides him. I mean, I do have another league that I'm in with Matt that I do care about. I do care about that league, but that's the one I didn't win that one. So, but yeah, the DoD's the league I care about most. So the fact that I didn't make the playoffs here, it's gonna hurt me. But consolation prize, I think what is it? So altogether we're in 14 leagues, and we brought home 4 chips and an additional 13 playoff appearances. So yeah, between the 3 of us, we're in 14 leagues, and we made the playoffs in 13 of them. And made quite a few Super Bowls. So as far as why you should listen to us, that's why.
Yeah.
But
Real quick,
yeah,
I also didn't
Yeah.
I didn't include in my conversation Samantha's team because I don't know if she's gonna listen to this podcast and I don't want her to yelling at me because it's her team. And let's make it clear, it's her team. But if you include Samantha's team in there, that's an extra chance. That's an extra one. So yeah, good year. Good year.
all right. So
And just
okay.
real quick before we move on, I had 2 points on this. One being, I don't think anybody understands when I tell them that I've been in this league for 20. What's this? The 21st year? Like they're like, oh, how much? Because I straight up, I'm like, this is my number 1 league, DoD, and they're like, oh, like what's the buy-in? I'm like, it's free. They're like, so you don't win anything. And I'm like, no. And they're like, why is that your favorite? Like, why do you care? And it just makes me want to like karate chop them in the throat. Like, you just don't understand. Like, for anybody in DoD, it's DoD or bust, and it is every single time. There's no money. It's
100%.
all pride. It's all bragging rights. It's for sure my number 1 league.
I would trade both of my championships and all the money I won in both of them in the other leagues this year for a win in DoD, straight up.
Yeah,
Every
I
time.
definitely would too.
Yeah,
I would
no
I would
question.
go as far to say like I
I
don't
would
even
trade
care if I
it
make the
for
playoffs in other
yeah, as
leagues.
long as Matt doesn't win, I would trade it just for that.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's Matt or Mitch, and so naturally I kind of pose that. The other point I wanted to make, Alex, is I didn't realize this until I think last week when we were talking about, or when I just kind of saw the infographics on everybody. The league that you beat me in, I'm curious, like this is just your thoughts. I'm curious the thoughts on this. Joe Burrow led the league in passing yards and touchdowns on my team. Derrick Henry led the league or tied the league in, or was no, he wasn't. Was he I can't remember how many rushing touchdowns he finished with on the
I think
season. But
Gibbs
Derrick Henry
and
was a
Bart.
night.
well,
Bart
Cook had the most, right? And then
I
Yeah,
thought
Cook
Gibbs
tied
passed
with
them all
somebody, I
though.
think.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so then Henry, 1,900 yards. Apparently, he was super close to the 2,000 yard mark, and nobody really ever knew it. So he's a 1,900-yard rusher with double-digit touchdowns. So, yeah.
So three of them finished
he
together.
tied with
Gibbs,
Cook and Gibbs for the most TDs.
I thought Gibbs had passed him, but I guess they'd all tied.
So
Well, this is
Gibbs,
rushing. Gibbs had the most overall.
four
He had
receiving.
more receiving. Cook and Henry only had two
Oh,
receiving.
my bad.
Okay.
My bad. Okay, that's what I read then.
Vinny
Okay.
specifically said rushing, so
Wow.
that's why.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's wild. So 2,100 total yards, 18 touchdowns out of Henry on my team. So we've got Burrow, number one quarterback from a passing yards and passing touchdowns perspective, and then Jamar Chase triple crown, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And I lost in the semifinals.
Oh, and don't forget Bijan Robinson, George Kittle, like Aaron Jones. Like this, just I mean, your weakness is look. It's a double QB league, and you had to start Kyler Murray. You know, that'll get you. So.
Yeah, it'll get no. I just think it's funny. I was actually sitting there yesterday or on Sunday thinking about it because they showed all the graphics for who was in the league. And it was like, these are your three league leaders, and I'm like, they're all on my sleeper team, and I finished in third.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so
like if you look at this was the matchup, right?
Team?
Well, I'll show you the matchup. Like Jackson and Burrow go toe to toe every week. Sure, Kyron Williams had a big game, but the big, Chuba Hubbard, man, Chuba just destroyed this week. My receivers did nothing. It's PPR league. I don't even know why I start wide receivers. I'd start all running backs if I could. And then here we go. This is who you lost to.
Jonathan Taylor.
That's who I lost to as well, Vinny. That's who I
Oh,
lost
and
to.
then James Conner had like 34 in the first half. So you had what 150 points out of running backs?
Oh, probably my whole
Out of
team's
three
running backs.
running
I
backs?
started Connor, Taylor,
Yeah.
Williams, Hubbard, and then keep in mind I've still got Irving on the bench here that I didn't start because I didn't have enough space for him, or else I would have. Oh, and Gus Edwards.
And I can't remember. I
started him.
I typically don't start Aaron Jones. Oh, CeeDee Lamb was hurt, so yeah, he didn't. I benched him.
No, you played him.
But I did. I typically don't start Aaron Jones. I don't know why. He's on my bench. Gotcha.
I was looking at week 17 before, just because I was showing you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So let's move on then. Now that we're all caught up on stuff that happened in the last few weeks, let's talk about stuff that actually happened this week in football. So this isn't necessarily going to be as fantasy relevant as much as it's going to be. Although I did one of my championships was a Week 18 championship. I hated it. I don't like games like that, but it worked out for me. But anyway, yeah. So here's some stuff that went down this week. Let's start with getting people paid. What did you guys think about getting Mike Evans paid? For those who didn't see it, Mike Evans needed to get to 1,000 yards receiving to get a $3 million bonus. Not to mention to be his 11th consecutive season tying Jerry Rice for the most all time. Because he had missed those 4 games throughout the year, he wasn't going to get there. He got to within 5 yards, and then the other team gets the ball. The Bucs stopped them. There's about 30 seconds left in the game. The Bucs need to take a knee. They win the game. They go to the playoffs. If the Bucs let the other team score, they might lose the game and miss the playoffs. It's very important. They decide to throw a pass to get Mike Evans the ball and get the yards, and he does. He gets a catch for like 7 yards, gets this $3 million bonus. What did you guys think of that?
Well, I think the only chance they're going to have in the playoffs is with a happy Mike Evans, so might as well make him happy. The only chance you're going to have at beating any of these playoff teams, you're going to go up against Eagles, Lions, Vikings, Packers, no shot. You're going to need every part of Mike Evans, so make him happy. He's going to try so. You know how hard he's going to try next week for the Bucs after they did that for him? Yeah, that's worth.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw on TV. He looked very dejected on the sideline, because they had scored and had to kick off, and then he didn't think he was going to get the ball back. He looked very dejected on the sideline.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually there was an interview with Baker that he was mad that Bucky Irving scored that touchdown. I don't know if you saw that too. What were your thoughts after Bucky Irving took that broken play? They lateral it at the 20 and he runs it in. He's like, oh shit. Listen, I like it for Mike Evans. It was a super cool moment if you got to watch it on TV. The whole team was excited, the whole stadium was excited. It was like they won the Super Bowl. I can't help but think though, because they force fed Rob Gronkowski a few years back. Oh, that was on the Bucs too. This Bucs owner has lost millions of dollars by them just force feeding bullshit. Excuse my language. To these players, and I actually think that's pretty funny. I'd be curious to see what he thinks about it. I just had to give this guy a $3.5 million bonus when we should have been taking a knee.
So I'm sure it doesn't come out of the owner's pocket, but also at the same time, I think Gronk Gronk was like, I need one more catch for 1 million, and Tom Brady said, I don't think Tom Brady said anything. He just called a timeout from the sideline or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you made that point, Vinny, because like my dad talked about it too. He was surprised about that, and so my argument, there's two things. First of all, it's a moot point. There's collective bargaining in the NFL. Money is set aside for players. It's been collective bargained for. So that money like wasn't the owners to keep either way. But more importantly, if you go out of your way to help your players, other players will see that and want to play for you. If you went out of your way to prevent guys, because he was saying, I'll just bench Mike Evans earlier in the game, make sure he didn't get it, which like I understand that logic from a business standpoint, but if you do that and everyone else sees you do that, I'm going to be a lot less likely as a free agent to want to sign with your team, knowing you're basically an anti-player type owner, right? Whereas by doing this for Gronk previously and now for Evans, you're showing everybody that like, hey, you're on board with making sure your players are taken care of and get paid. People are going to want to play for that guy. So when they're sitting down at a negotiation and there's two teams offering you the same amount of money, that might be a feather in the cap for the Bucs. Say, you know what? Even though they're both offering the same, I know this guy's going to go above and beyond for me. So I think it is long term a good business decision for the owner to do that. Even though short term, obviously, it's going to hit your checkbook, right?
I can also remember we're also forgetting that they're just humans, and like Dan Patrick was saying, like he thinks taking care of Evans is a indirect way of talking to Landry and OBJ. So like he had history in other places with other wide receivers. This is kind of more of how do you say it? More of like his well-being in the NFL. Like Baker wants to do this for his wide receivers because of the narrative that OBJ created with him. So I just think it's like kind of your situation, like what you're doing it for. What are your motives. I think, I don't know if it really costs, but I would also like to point out if we can get off Evans, I would like to propose the Barkley thing. So 19 less carries, 19 less carries than Eric Dickerson, right? So I know there's an extra game, but the amount of carries, he's 19 less carries than Dickerson to break 100. All he needs is 101 yards and 19 carries, and he will still beat the amount of carries Dickerson had. I know it's an extra game, but he'll be doing it in less carries. The second thing is, if he gets hurt, Eagles fans will never, ever forgive Barkley. But the thing that his father said was so interesting in the media is like, you just took away an opportunity for our last name to be talked about and written about in the history books for how, like, everyone knows who Dickerson is for the last 30 years because he's the single leading. Every time someone gets close to 2,000 yards, Dickerson's name comes up. But what happens in the next 20 years or whatever, if anyone gets close to 2,000 yards, that name Barkley will come up. So it's like very fascinating for me, that situation, because if he does get hurt and doesn't win a Super Bowl, it's like very pointless, and the Eagles will probably ship you out of town. They don't want you. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that situation.
I don't even think. I think the city wanted it. I think if you ask Eagles fans, they would have wanted it.
I think they did.
You get to have it with your. You get to have it with your franchise because, like, also, first of all, Eric Dickerson has no legs to stand on. Like, I get that he's a murderer and an awful person, but the record that he broke was the record of O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson averaged more yards per carry than Dickerson, and he did it in 2 less games than Dickerson. So O.J. Simpson would have crushed both Dickerson and Saquon given the same amount of games. So, like, first of all, the argument that Dickerson's the guy and no one should be allowed, like, I hate that they've increased the amount of games, don't get me wrong, but the argument that, like, oh, well, it's not fair that Saquon's going to get 17 when Dickerson had 16, well, he broke the record of the guy who had 14. And the guy who had 14 did way better. Dickerson also lost something 19 fumbles that season, whereas Saquon lost 3. Like,
I'll let you continue your point just to add a little bit. They actually interviewed Dickerson before the week, and he said he didn't care about the extra game because he acknowledges that he had 2 extra games over OJ. Okay. So it's not, the narrative isn't from Dickerson.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I was that was more of a counterpoint to Mitch, but anyways, yes, I think it's like, I understand the logic behind that we want to win a Super Bowl, we're going to rest, but like there's just so much going into this, like so much, like you said, for your legacy, for having your name etched in time, for your organization. I'm curious to know if any part of Saquon didn't want to do it to the Giants, because like that's also things like the revenge game, right? Like, oh man, could you imagine getting to break that record against the Giants? Man. Like, man, you couldn't have held me back unless, like, because we only see what the media tells us. We don't know how that, like, Saquon may have had a really good relationship with the Giants, and the Giants, look, they made a business decision. It was a bad one because they went all in on Daniel Jones, and he's no longer on the team because they cut him, right? So like they made the wrong call. I'm not excusing that, but like their logic was sound. They're like, we're gonna spend our money on a quarterback and an offensive line. We're not gonna spend our money on a running back. I understand the logic. Like it obviously blew up in their face spectacularly, but hindsight's 2020. But I'm just curious, like maybe Saquon had a really good relationship with Giants fans and the Giants ownership and like the people in that building, so he didn't want to necessarily go out and rub it in their faces. Like a lot of people might have that motivation. Maybe he didn't have that motivation. I don't know. He hasn't addressed it, but like Saquon has handled this very professionally. But I'm curious. I would be curious to know if he really wanted to do it and the Eagles told him no, or if he was one of the ones saying, no, I'm cool. I don't really want to do this.
So my understanding is that the choice was Sirianni's. That's kind of what I've heard in some of the reports.
And that's what Saquon said in the media. But like, you're not going to come out and cause rock the boat right now, right? So like, but I'm curious to know behind closed doors, was it really Sirianni's decision, right?
So
right.
The point that I have about that, I'm glad Mitch brought it up. I don't mind sitting. I get it. Go for a Super Bowl, individual statistics. I think this is a team win. You know, they've talked about it a lot. Even the offensive line and the offensive players were like, we would love to be a part of Saquon running for 2,000 yards. Like it just means, or like breaking the record, it means a big thing to the unsung heroes who's the offensive lines. I don't have a problem with sitting as long as it was 100% Saquon's choice. I think he has handled himself so well throughout the year. Like he had a chance to break the Eagles' all-time single game record, and he said no. Let the young boys eat. I think that was a game that Mitch lost because I remember him talking about it. So it's one of those things where it's like he's handled himself well all year. He's changed this offense drastically. It should have been his choice when you're dealing with that magnitude. We're not talking about incentives. So we're talking about breaking a single season record. It should have been Saquon's choice in my mind.
Here's the thing,
and
Ross,
allow him to make the responsible decision of, I am okay putting the team forward and sitting, not, so I don't know. That's all.
I was
that's my
sitting there watching the game, and I can't remember if it was Ross Tucker or I forget, but whoever the play-by-play was talking, he had the greatest point for me that I didn't realize. We're thinking of two through Barkley's lens. At the same time, you have to realize that like this is the reason why I didn't want the Jets or Breece Hall this year is because they had the Band-Aid offensive line. It's the reason why I was a little nervous on 3 new linemen for the Ravens and all that kind of stuff. Is now it's like, what are you going to do? Send Barkley out there with a bunch of second string offensive linemen to set this record? Because you're not playing Dickerson and Maliata, who are your like one's 35 and the other one's 27 with like a knee injury. So like, and then the other guy, what's his name? He's 34. So like, it's not even necessarily about. And then Jurgens in the center is also injured. So it's not even necessarily about Barkley. It was more about is Sirianni going to go out there and put out the second string offensive line, or is he going to force his hurt offensive line to go out there so they can get it together with Barkley? And it's like that becomes all very confusing, and it's just easier to sit your line, sit your QB, and sit your running back and say none of my starters are playing. So I think maybe Sirianni didn't know the correct choice, but it was just the easier choice, and he only had a couple days to make the decision. And when you think of it through the offensive line's perspective, if they are banged up, like, what are you going to send up a banged up Lane Dickerson out there, who's one of the greatest guards to play, and like if he's not 100% for the playoffs the next week, just because? So it's very confusing, and I'm glad I didn't have to make the decision. It's fascinating. I didn't mean to take it off Evans, but that was like I couldn't stop thinking about it. And put yourself in that situation. What if you were that running back?
No, you're fine. You're fine taking it off Evans because that was going to be a later point, but. I do want to kind of jump back to the getting people paid. So the other person, there are a couple people that got paid, right? Like Geno Smith got paid, but he only had to throw 185 yards. That was going to happen anyway because he was the quarterback of the team. But and 185 yards and win the game. So Geno actually made a lot of money for himself by beating the Rams, but the Rams weren't trying. They were benched all their starters. But anyway, the one I was going to talk about that another organization helping a player get paid was the Bills. The Bills punter needed one more punt in order to get paid, and they got down to the 30-yard line, and instead of kicking field goal, they punted. So
I like that a
instead
lot.
of kicking the 40-yard field goal, they decided to punt just so the punter got paid. I mean, this was a $100,000 bonus, not a $3 million one. But I mean, look, I'm not saying that's chump change. I'd love $100,000, but I'm saying like for NFL numbers,
what's the
like
percent?
you know what I mean?
Yeah, what's the percentage
I
of
actually
the
did not
contract?
know that.
100,000 might be more.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So
I
for
did not
Vinny
know
and anyone
that.
who
I
doesn't
love
know, the Bills drove the field. They were easily in field goal range, but instead of kicking a field goal, they punted just so the punter would get paid for his bonus. So
And
That's great. And there was another one actually who ended up not getting it, but I don't know if you noticed this. The Titans gave Tony Pollard like 23 carries in an insignificant last game because I think he ended up like 20 or 30 yards short. But they were force feeding him the rock to try to get him a bonus as well. So
there's also the Drake May taking a sack on Von Miller when it wasn't really a sack that was a $1.5 million bonus. Drake May is not even touched. He's kind of like in Von Miller's vicinity, and that's a $1.5 million bonus for him. There's a bunch. Yeah. It's just like I think it's funny, but it's more the reason why Week 18 should not be part of fantasy playoffs.
yeah,
at
but that
all.
was more like the Drake May one. Like that's more of like, first of all, he's a rookie, so I'm surprised he even knew about that. But like that's more of the boys getting each other paid than like ownership and the coaching being in on it. Like the play that the Bucks ran for Evans, that was a design play. The coach was involved in that. The coach celebrated with him. That wasn't like Baker didn't go to the huddle, supposed to be doing victory formation, then call an audible, right? Like that was a planned thing that the team wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't there also another one like Kyler Murray, 50 yards and a rushing touchdown got him like $1 million bonus? That's how play call could have been like, hey, pass the ball, and Kyler's like, I'm not passing the ball on this play. I promise you guys. So like,
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
there's some that are just wild.
not just to hop back to Mike Evans really quick because I was doing a quick math. After he came back from injury, so he missed 3 games with injury, and then they had the bye right after. He averaged 95.6 yards per game over the last 7 weeks to hit that incentive. To put that into perspective, the only player who averaged over 100 yards per game on the season was Jamar Chase. So I'm not going to say the last 7 games because I'd have to look at a lot of players, but when you extrapolate his last 7 games versus all the other wide receivers in the NFL across the whole season, he would have been the second highest on a yards per game basis over those last 7. So
yeah, but I think part of that's
1,000-yard
game script
season.
and
He
quarterback
earned that
comfort
1,000-yard
level though,
season.
because like Godwin was out for season, and Baker had been throwing to a bunch of rookies, pretty much. Kate Otten during this 4-week span where Mike Evans was out, right, or whatever this was. The 4 weeks that Mike Evans was out, it was all Kate Otten because Evans and Godwin both weren't there. And then once Evans came back, a lot of those Otten Otten passes got thrown to Mike Evans. I know because I had Otten on my team. So I don't know that was like, I don't know that Evans or Baker were both actively trying to get him to 1,000 yards. I think that just, they were playing to get into the playoffs, and this was their best offensive weapon, so they're utilizing it.
Just real quick for both of me, for me, for fun, but to both of you. Tell me when to stop. I'm going reverse order of wide receivers. Tell me when to stop for Mike Evans. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, stop right here because Mike Evans is just better, but not going to be better than the next guys. Does that make sense? Like, so like Rashad Bateman, like, do you think Evans next year is going to be better than Bateman? Like Zay Flowers, Jamison Williams, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Reed.
Stop.
So you think
You're
he's
going backwards? So like
I'm going reverse, like bottom up. So next will be like Nico, AJ, Judy, Wilson, Evans. So like maybe I'll just start from the top.
there's no
and go
way he's
down.
better than Neighbors. Not for me. Yeah.
Interesting. So like let me just go the opposite way real quick then. So Chase, Jefferson, St. Brown, McLaurin, Brian Thomas, London, Lamb, Adams, Sutton, Najigba, Wilson.
I think he's better than Adams.
So he's about the 9 spot, 10 spot,
who are we
which
talking
is
about
where
right
he
now?
finished. Evans. I just want to know where he ranks for you guys. I'm just wondering because like it's very interesting.
Well,
Like
we could do the math, right? Like how many games did he miss? He missed. If so,
He had the 10th
I won't
best average.
count it. Like he left this game hurt, but he played most of this game, so we'll count this game. So he missed 3 games, right? Yeah. So
3 or 4, something like that.
no,
yeah.
just 3 from what I can see. So
Okay.
again, he left one game hurt, but he got 8 points in that game because he got a touchdown before he got hurt. So I'm gonna leave that one there. He got
Gotcha.
hurt dropping a touchdown. Well, he dropped because he got hurt. But anyway, so he had 137 points. He missed 3 games or 17 games, so he played 14 games. So if we multiply that out, if we extrapolate, add 3 more games, you would have had 166 fantasy points, right? So 166 fantasy points puts him at wide receiver number 6.
So are you drafting Drake London or Mike Evans next year? Let's say it's your pick and both are on the board.
Well, so I'm huge on both those guys, as you know. I've been a big advocate of Drake. I know, but I'll answer your question. But first, let me preface this by saying I've always been a huge Drake London guy. I think he's just never had a good quarterback. I thought he would have a good quarterback with my boy Thuggins this year. He didn't. But just look at the targets and look what he does with the targets. The problem is the balls just are never near him. He didn't have 10 catches on 18 because he dropped 8 balls. He had this because 8 of them were nowhere near him, right? So I don't know how often they're going to be force feeding him because they were still playing for something here. So to answer your question, I would still take Evans just because until he shows me he can't do it anymore, I'm going to keep riding that train. But I wouldn't be unhappy if I ended up with Drake London. You know what I'm saying?
Vinny, London or Evans?
I'm taking London. I would probably put Evans in a wide receiver 2 for me. I wouldn't draft him as a wide receiver 1. So I'd take Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, McLaurin. Let's say.
I mean, we can take these 3 out of it, right? So
yeah, you definitely take those out. What about CD?
I'd take CD over him. I'll take Neighbors over him. I'll take Puka
what about
over him.
Wilson? Let's pretend Rodgers is not there.
I would consider it. I have a hard time for me.
Wilson might be better without Rodgers.
Evans is what he is. So do I want to go with the upside of London, Higgins on a different team, Rashee Rice if he's not suspended for the year, Brian Thomas? I'm taking the upside. I would rather have the younger guy who may finish top 5.
So what about Addison
than
or Evans?
I'm not going to take Addison because I wouldn't put a wide receiver
AJ Brown
over
or Evans.
I'll take AJ Brown all day.
Jerry Jeudy with Jameis.
Shoot, Jerry Jeudy with Jameis, I'm putting right there with
Jerry Jeudy with
JJ.
Jameis is up here, bro.
Malik Neighbors.
I'm taking Neighbors. I don't care about the quarterback situation.
Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman or Evans?
Oh, Evans.
No, I'll take Evans.
Okay, so he's going to be right around that floating end of wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 spot.
Which is pretty much where I took him this year, right? So.
Yeah. Well,
I took him as my wide receiver 2, and he finished as my wide receiver 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you're excluding guys like Tyreek, DK, who have been up there historically.
I'm glad you mentioned Tyreek because that was one of the points that I wanted to make before we got kind of on this Evans bandwagon. So Tyreek Hill is such a big baby. Did you guys see what he did, refusing to play the fourth quarter? What a child. And then after the game, comes out and talks about how he's going to have to move on because of his family. And then today he met with the team and didn't say he wanted to leave. Yeah, you did terrible this year. He didn't even have 1,000 yards receiving. He's just awful. He's average. That's what he is. You
know who would take him back?
You would?
No, I would draft him. Kansas City would take him back in a second.
I think every team in the league will take Tyreek Hill if he's available.
Yeah, they would.
Well, that's the thing.
I think so
it's
too.
not, and I think that's why he didn't tell the team he wanted out today because he realized it's not up to him. They gave him a huge contract extension. He's still got 2 years left on his deal. They set the new market by paying him.
They can sit him if they want.
They came out in support of him when the police, had their run-in with him week 1. They have done everything for this guy, and I couldn't play with a teammate who quit on me. Well, refusing to go in the fourth quarter in a winnable game, a game that was still contested, and yes, I realized that they needed the Broncos to lose to the Chiefs, and the Broncos won 38-0 in order to make the playoffs. So I get that they were probably not going to make the playoffs at that point, but just to quit on your team in the middle of the game when you're still technically not eliminated, that's just.
It's interesting for me that a lot of 2s do better than their 1. For example, Najigba did better than Metcalf. So my question is, does Hill help or hurt Waddle by leaving or staying next year? Is Waddle's value, let's say everything stays the same in Miami, 2 is healthy, but Tyreek is gone. Does that help or hurt Waddle?
Oh, it's gonna help him tremendously. If you look at the games where Hill hasn't played and they've actually had a good quarterback also playing, because Hill doesn't play and it's Huntley's garbage and Thompson's garbage. But on games where Hill doesn't play, I don't know if there was any this year, but last year and then Waddle's rookies bad. But if you look at last year, I think the whole Alex nailed it. Alex refused to touch Dolphins players this year. Their offense was down big. Um, if you look at Waddle last year on games without Hill, he played very well. And then Waddle's rookie season, people sleep on it. He was one of the top rookies of all time in yards and receptions before Puka and Brock come along.
So
Um,
Tyreek leaves to a different team. It's going to be the same thing all over again. Oh, Tyreek's leaving the Chiefs, going to the Dolphins. He's going to fall in the draft. I guarantee you, unless he goes back to the Chiefs or somewhere else, Tyreek Hill will fall out of the first round in the draft. So Waddle and Hill next year are two value targets to massively aim at if Hill
Well,
leaves.
well,
I think
just to go
I think they're two quarterbacks. Look, everyone talks about Tyreek Hill like he's great, but let's look at it. Like if you look at the sample size, who was he great with? Patrick Mahomes, who most people agree is one of the best, right? He's a
Yeah.
generational talent. And Tua, who when healthy, which is rare, but when healthy, outside of his first couple years, yeah, he was terrible. But since his first couple years, once he's acclimated to the NFL, when he is healthy, he is one of the best passing quarterbacks
Sure.
in the NFL. So like, yes, Tyreek Hill has done great when he's playing with a great passing quarterback. So like when he doesn't
you're
play
saying
with
if
a
he
great
goes to the
passing
Raiders
quarterback,
or something,
he's medium at
okay.
best. The point that I'm trying to make is when you look at some of these other guys, so perfect example, let's look at some of these other wide receivers here. Let me go back to all players. So we've talked about him, CeeDee Lamb. Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was still wide receiver 7 playing with Cooper Rush most of the season because Dak Prescott got hurt in week 6, right? He played more than half of this season with a backup quarterback, and he's wide receiver 7, right? Cortland Sutton
and missed
played with
two
a
games,
rookie.
I think.
You know what I mean? Drake London had a quarterback change, and not only that, Drake London's quarterback had a 6-game stretch where he threw 9 picks and only 1 TD. Again, my
You
boy
could even
Thuggins.
go with Brian Thomas.
Brian Thomas had to play
5
with a
games
backup
Mac Jones.
quarterback for forever. Rookie quarterback. All these guys who popped off, you know what I mean? Mike
So-
Evans is up here and he missed 4 games. Freaking Jerry Jeudy wasn't even the wide receiver 1 to start the year. He ended up playing with 4 different quarterbacks. Come on, man.
No, it's gonna matter. You're
Nico
saying
Collins
it's
was
gonna
on
matter
IR.
what team he goes
All these
to
names I'm
more
putting,
than himself.
all these names I'm saying. Jameson Williams was wide receiver 2. All these guys, I still haven't gotten to Tyreek. So yeah, Tyreek Hill is good with a good quarterback, but there's other guys who are good when they don't have a good quarterback. I don't know that he's as good as he's made out to be.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying
I will say though,
let me throw a
Huntley and
hypothetical.
Shaq Thompson could be some of the worst quarterbacks of all time starting in the NFL.
No,
Like
for sure.
that,
They
I
didn't
get what
do
you're
him any
saying. I
favors.
get what you're saying, but they rolled out Dorian Thompson Robinson for 6 games out of the year, basically. That. It's just
Can I
trash. Their
propose some
backup is
hypotheticals?
hot garbage.
Let's say he goes to what's the bad team that does I get what you, so let me just make sure I understand Alex's point. It's more about Tyreek Hill going to a team that would use him and need him with a great quarterback. So let's say he goes to the Panthers or the Patriots. Let's say he goes to the Patriots just to make this simple because I don't know how you guys feel
Well,
about Bryce
the
Young.
Patriots have Drake May. So he needs a guy who can throw an accurate long ball. So I think the Patriots would be a better fit for him, whereas he would be terrible with the Panthers. I think.
Okay, so let's say he goes. Okay, then let me flip it. I apologize. Let's go with the Panthers. I didn't know how people felt about Bryce Young with his last 6 or 7 weeks.
Panthers, Titans, Giants.
Yeah, okay, let's say he goes to the Titans. Would you rather have Brian Thomas Jr. or Tyreek Hill?
Brian Thomas Jr.
Oh, dang. Brian Thomas Jr. That hurts my heart to say, though.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Would you rather have Cortland Sutton or Tyreek Hill?
Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's always been a good player. He's never had a quarterback, and now Bo Nix is there, and he's got a quarterback, and all of a sudden he's a good player again.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
This is very interesting to me.
I'll just say this: that Alex said he would never want to play with someone who quits on the team. He can be on my fantasy team whenever he wants. So
Not knowing who the
I'm,
Jets quarterback is, Wilson.
I'm probably
or
still
Hill.
putting Hill at worst case scenario. Hill is still a top 10 wide receiver.
You're telling me going
matter
into the
where he
season
goes.
next year, if DTR is named the starter, because Tua finally retires because he has another concussion in the offseason, and they go into the season with DTR as the starter and Huntley as the backup, you're telling me you're drafting Tyreek Hill.
No, I for sure wouldn't do that.
Okay.
That's so. It
But
is
if he has a
interesting though.
starting caliber
Right, and that's what I
quarterback-
just said. I'm not saying Tyreek Hill is a bad player. I'm saying Tyreek Hill, the thing that's good about Tyreek Hill is he's faster than everyone else, right? So he can get separation, especially on the deep ball, but he needs someone who can accurately get it to him. So he needs to play with a quality passer. They don't have to be a great quarterback. Maybe they can be someone who's immobile or who throws kind of bad underneath routes and gets picked off a lot, as long as he can throw an accurate deep ball. He needs an accurate deep ball thrower, which is what he had with his previous two quarterbacks. If he has an accurate deep ball thrower, yes, he can be a good player, but I think he is not a great wide receiver. I think he is very great. He's one of the best ever at what he does specifically. So if he's on a team that can take advantage of what he does specifically, he will be a wide receiver one. If he's not on a team that can do what he does specifically, he won't be. Whereas guys like Mike Evans and Garrett Wilson and Jerry Jeudy, like, they don't have to be on a team or CeeDee Lamb. They don't need to be with a quarterback that does specifically what they do well, because they're good at a lot of things and they can make it work regardless.
What if he goes to deep ball player, and I know how much you love this player, Alex, based on the wide receivers that for whatever reason you're obsessed with. What if he went to the Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson as a starter?
Oh, wow, that's so interesting.
You guys saw what they did with... So, yeah, if Flacco's still the backup, we can assume Richardson gets benched and Flacco takes over, then yes, I would take him with Flacco. I wouldn't want him with Anthony Richardson.
But all Richardson has is a long ball. Look at Alec Pierce. He made Alec Pierce fantasy relevant half the season.
He can't throw 5 yards, but he can throw 40 yards accurately.
I mean, that's 50, true.
60.
You know what? That's a fair point. I mean, yeah, I just don't have faith in Richardson keeping that job. But sure, I mean, that's fair.
Last one, then we can move off a hill. Would you rather have Brian Thomas Jr. or Tyreek Hill on the Chargers?
I'm probably... Hill. So this is going to be, like, I think that's a much more interesting question. I'm still going to take Brian Thomas Jr. just because, like, I can't look at a guy who played as well as Brian Thomas Jr. did this year with nothing around him. They had no running game all season, so everyone knew they were going to pass the ball because they couldn't run the ball. Their quarterback was out a lot of the season when he did play, wasn't good, and yet somehow Brian Thomas Jr. as a rookie, who wasn't even supposed to be wide receiver one, by the way, on that team, did this. He's only going to get better, right? He had 133 targets this year, and I think
Cortland Sutton on the Broncos, Cortland Sutton on the Broncos, or Tyreek Hill on the Chargers?
Tyreek. I don't have Sutton.
That one I would go with Tyreek, just because I think Sutton is going to be more TD dependent than other players. So
Mike Evans on the Bucks or Tyreek Hill on the Chargers?
Oh, Mike Evans. Give me Mike.
Ooh.
Give me Iron Mike.
I'm taking Hill, but I know how Alex feels about that.
I mean, let's see. How many games did Hill miss this season? Because I see Evans missed 3, and he's here as a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. Let me scroll down here. Oh, let me keep scrolling. Let me scroll a little more. Oh, there he is. There's Hill. Just saying.
Not to also derail this conversation, but as long as we're talking about players potentially on another team, what do we think is going to happen in Minnesota?
I think Darnold put the writing on the wall this week in 18. I think they're going to ride McCarthy. Unless Darnold goes on a run in the playoffs, I think he had every opportunity to take the starting job long term with this week by beating the Lions, and he put up a dud.
I think you guys are great. He went 14-3.
Yeah.
He went 14-3. Like, how does he not keep, like, if you don't keep him as your, like, don't get me wrong, I was as shocked as anyone as how good he is, and I talked about look, and it cost me, right? I talked about all season how we disrespected him, and so did everyone else that was fantasy analysts. People kept starting other QBs and benching him. Like, I'm just saying, like, leagues that we're in, like, he was always on the bench.
Yeah.
I finally decided to go with him over Goff one week, and it cost me in the playoffs in that other league I was talking about. I wouldn't have won there anyway, but I would have won that week. So, like, he burned me a little bit, and yes, he was awful, literally awful in the game this weekend. However, it's like, yeah, man, he had 6 red zone trips and never scored a touchdown, but he also had 6 red zone trips. He was still moving the football. He just, couldn't get in. Like, yeah, this game was terrible. It's not a good sample size, but yeah, he went 14-3 and he lost this week against the 15-2 home team Detroit Lions. Like, okay, the number 1 team in the NFC. Like, that's not the worst team in the world to lose to. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like I understand the money aspect of it, but
right.
A guy that comes in and balls out that hard, I would keep him. But Minnesota moved on from Kirk after he balled out that hard, but Kirk was coming off an injury. Darnold's not coming off an injury. So I feel like he would have to lay a massive egg in the playoffs for them to not want to keep him.
Okay.
So counter argument to that, though, Alex, just really quick, sorry, is the reason I think that they can easily move on from Darnold is they easily moved on for Cousins, and Cousins got benched three-quarters of the way through the season. Like I am beginning to think that Kevin O'Connell is
This
an
goes back to
offensive
my play calling. Yeah,
genius.
that's what I'm trying to say.
And you can plug and play anybody in that system as long as they're halfway decent and they're going to be good. I
See,
would
this
let
is
Darnold walk for the money that he's going to demand or
right.
command on the
Okay.
market. I would let him go and let O'Connell do whatever he's going to do with the offense.
This is where I'm at. Okay, this is where I'm at. A couple years ago, I argued with Vinny. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Just give me the play caller. I mean, obviously the quarterback can change the plays because he gets like the last 13 seconds to do whatever he wants. That's not communicating through the headset. But I've preached to you, Vinny, for the longest time, play caller, play caller. But then Russell Wilson teamed up with Sean Payton, and all my theory went out the window because I had every confidence. I'm like, there's just no way Sean Payton and Russ together aren't going to be great, right? But then Sean Payton totally reclaimed his self as offense play caller. So I think if Kevin McConnell's up there with Shanahan and those guys, if he truly is, hear me out. Where do you call no? So just for context, where's his name? JJ McCarthy is going to be paid $5.5 million. Michael Penix is 5.7. They are two of the lowest stars. Bo Nix is 4.7 as the lowest. Okay. Tell me when I stop. Matthew Stafford at 40 million. Are you going to pay Darnold $40 million? If you're
no.
the Aaron Rodgers is 37. Derek Carr is 37. Baker Mayfield is 33. Kyler Murray is 46. Jalen Hurts is 51. Herbert is 52. Goff is 53. Tua is 53. Trevor Lawrence is 55. Jordan Love is 55. And then Burrow
That's
and Dak
crazy.
are the top. Right. So
I,
what is Darnold going to get? Realistically, Matt Stafford's getting 40, Rodgers is getting 37, Carr's getting 30, Mayfield 33, Geno Smith is getting 28, Gardner Minshew is getting 14. That's the biggest drop off between Geno Smith is 26, 27, 28, and Gardner Minshew's 12 and 13. So that Darnold is, for context, being paid less than Minshew right now at 11.5. So it's going to have to go higher than 11.5. Where do you draw the line? At Josh Allen? At 44 million, sure, that's a great deal. But then Rodgers and Stafford are 40 million as well, and Carr is also 40 million. And oh, by the way, Kirk Cousins is past 46 million. So unless you're willing
yeah.
to pay Darnold that type of money, 46, $50 million to be up there with Goff, Herbert, Tua, Stafford, Rodgers, Carr, that's not, unless you're willing to pay that money, it's not going to be Darnold in Minnesota. That's what I'm,
It's risk. So my counterpoint is it's risk versus reward, and that applies to both the team and the player. We argue, ironically, in DoD about how important the quarterback position is. Well, there's no argument in the NFL. You cannot win without a good quarterback. That, yes, maybe once every 20 years there's a defensive team with a bad quarterback that wins, but generally speaking, the teams that are good have good quarterbacks. Look at all the teams that made the playoffs this year. They all have relatively good quarterbacks. So the risk, right? If you're the Vikings, you've got a good defense, you've got a good offense, everything's clicking. If you're like, hey, it's the play caller and not the quarterback, the risk is if you're wrong, you go from having the quarterback of the future, because Darnold is still young. Like, yes, this is not his first team, but he's still a young player. This is a guy you could have for another decade. So you're risking the potential future of your franchise by letting him walk. And the reward is hopefully our coach is good enough to make this other guy do the same thing. And we're going to have to pay him the same amount 3 years from now. So it's, do I want a discount at quarterback for 3 years? Do I risk my future for a quarterback for a 3-year discount when I already kind of have the pieces in place to make a run now versus signing him? And for the player, the same thing, right? They might be able to get Darnold at a bit of a discount than the market rate because, yes, Darnold wants to make money, but Darnold has been at multiple different teams. He has started for multiple different teams, and none of them have worked out. He finally found a place where not only is it working out, he's got fans who are cheering him on, he's having fun, he's winning, he looks good. Like, I'm not saying he's going to take the league minimum or anything, but like, when you're talking, hey, 40 million versus 35 million, I'd be willing to take the 35 million to play somewhere where I can be a contender and be liked and play well and have a good support staff around me than have to go play for a crap franchise like the Panthers or the Giants. Like, I just feel like there's risk rewards for both the player and the organization. And I think that it's a big risk for both of them to part ways, whereas the reward for staying together is pretty high.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's my
So
counterpoint.
th- let me,
As
let
far as how
me
much to pay
I
him, no,
think that
I wouldn't pay him $55 million if that's what it's going to take. Then okay, but I don't think he's going to demand that much after one good season when he's had so many bad seasons
Okay,
and how good that
more
team
real,
was.
really quick, Vinny. More realistically than Alex, Derek Carr left the Raiders to the Saints, and he got $37 million, and it wasn't like he did half as good as Darnold did. And then um, who else am I missing? Oh, Baker left the Carolina Panthers to go to the Bucks and got 33 million, and he did half as good as Sam Darnold did with the Vikings. So assuming the rates, I mean, Rodgers got 37 from the Jets. That's maybe a little bit different to leave, and he left and got 37. That's different because he was, considered all world. But Carr and those guys left average team or not even good teams, went to another average team and got closer to 40 million, 37 and 35. Darnold is being paid 10 right now. So are you going to pay him 38, 40 million? Because that's what you're going to have to. I mean, look at Kirk Cousins. He left and he got, where is it? $47 million.
Well,
47.
well,
So Darnold's being paid 10
Kirk
right
got
now.
paid because he deserved to get. Until he got hurt last year, he was on pace to be one of the best quarterbacks. He was like the top three quarterback. We've had this argument multiple times. Like
Sure, but
before he got
Darnold
hurt,
is
he
having
was
a
worth
better.
the money. Like, but
Yeah.
and sorry, I'll let you
Darnold's
chime in,
having
Vinny.
just.
I know I keep
Yeah.
talking, but you brought up
No,
something
you're
that I
good.
forgot to mention too about the whole risk reward thing, Mitch. As far as like Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield, those were veterans who had at least had a couple of good seasons elsewhere, whereas
Sure.
Darnold is not in that same category. He has never had a good season. Also, guaranteed money is what's important in the NFL now, because like it doesn't matter if you're signed for $50 million if only 20 of it's guaranteed, right? So there's also that, like if you flub and you're wrong on a guy, you can still walk away from it. So he might, if the risk for Darnold is if he goes and takes a bigger deal elsewhere, then maybe he's cut after one season because he plays so poorly. You know what I mean? And they don't want to eat like the salary cap hit. So I think that's part of it too. The risk reward is just because someone's contract says that much money doesn't mean they're actually getting paid that much money. And
No, for sure, but like
yeah,
it's still that much how much you're getting paid that year.
yeah,
So you still have to you're still paying Derek Carr 30, even though I'm looking at Derek Carr's contract right now, total guaranteed 100 of the 150 million. You're only paying him 37 that year. I
right. But Derek
understand.
Carr was a 10-year starter who had taken a team to the playoffs and done some things
Sure.
with a crap
Sure.
organization. Whereas that I do think he was still
What did
overpaid. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying like that.
yeah.
I think that's a very different scenario than Sam Darnold.
Okay, so then what did Trevor and Tua do to get 55 million?
Well, Tua had one of the best passing seasons ever. Trevor, I got nothing. But anyway, go ahead, Vinny. I'll hush because I've been talking a lot and we're kind of going long here. I want to get to these points.
No, you're good. I think the argument that you made is sound. I think my one thing is like, yes, Darnold has proved that he can win in the NFL. Do you think Darnold is good enough to take the Vikings to the Super Bowl? I don't think the Vikings are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I think that there's multiple teams in the NFC that are better and multiple teams in the AFC that are better. I don't think as a whole that Darnold has what it takes to get him there. And by paying him $30 million more than he's going to be making this year, they rode their defense all year. They have Justin Jefferson. They have a good offensive line. Your argument is like, oh, he's good enough. Quarterbacks are important. That's great. But by keeping Darnold for $30 million more dollars, do the Vikings lose any potential to compete with their defense and the rest of their offense? You know what I mean? So I don't personally think that Darnold is the guy that's going to take him to the promised land. He'll get him to the playoffs, obviously. But on a week-to-week basis, they were the kind of the same old Vikings. Like they didn't really. I don't feel like they blew out good teams.
Do you think do you
Um,
think Darnold's better than Murray? Because like it comes down to like the same thing with the Justin Jefferson and the CD Lamb contract. The same thing why it took Dak forever is because they look at and they say they think they're better than player X, so they want to be paid more. So if you're Sam Darnold, do you think you're better than Kyler Murray?
I mean, he was fifth in yards and fifth in touchdowns, and he had less pass attempts than everyone above him.
So then you probably think you should get paid more than $46 million because Kyler Murray, Tua, Trevor, those guys are all getting paid 46 to 55 million dollars. So it's going to come down to, does Darnold, if Darnold thinks he's better than Aaron Rodgers is getting 38 million, does he think he's better than Matthew Stafford? Matthew Stafford's getting 41. So if Darnold and his agent think they're better than Stafford, they're going to ask for more than 40 million dollars.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
but that comes down to psyche, right? Like I said, the whole risk reward argument I just made. Like, yeah, sure, obviously. Look, if Sam Darnold is just full of confidence, super full of himself, and thinks all the 4 years that he was terrible before this had nothing to do with him, and this is all
Right.
him, and he has that attitude, then sure, it's a different conversation, right? But
Yeah.
I would assume that someone who's been through the ringer for a few years might have a little better perspective. But let's
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? We'll see what happens in the playoffs.
The last thing I'll say on this, just because I love this conversation, is like, you can have 1 year of being paid $41 million and do bad and just cash out on that year. It could take you 4 years in the NFL to have his current contract equal that 1 year.
Right,
Because he's getting paid.
Mitch, I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm not saying that the Vikings should offer him 10 and that he should accept that. Right.
Sure.
I'm saying that. And again, I don't know the situation, and it's a lot of money. But like, I think if a really bad organization offers you 50, and the Vikings offer you 40, you might still consider the Vikings 40. Is all I'm
Sure.
saying. Right.
For sure.
So I don't know what that number is going to be, but I'm just saying, I think there's more to it than just, hey, this is what the market's going to be for this guy. And also, we don't know what the market's going to be like. Yes, he was great, but if you think it was all the coach and Vinny thinks part of it was the coach, then maybe these other organizations are going to think the same thing, right?
For sure.
So
For sure.
that's part of it too, because people are going to see what happened with, like you said, the last couple of huge QBs that got these massive deals have not worked out.
At all.
Stafford
Like,
didn't.
no one wants to pay
Stafford's fine, but he didn't get any
55.
better. You know, the Deshaun Watson deal is one of the worst deals in the history of football. Aaron Rodgers god awful and he's probably out the door. Kirk Cousins is going to be off the team.
Kirk Cousins.
Danny Dimes is
Carr,
going to be off
list
the
goes
is off
on.
the team. Like,
Yeah. Matt Flynn when they paid him back in the day. I'm not going to continue this conversation, but just do me a favor, if anybody's listening, you guys pull up the Vikings schedule, look at who they played, look at the scores of those games, and tell me that you think the Vikings are a good team that are legit contenders and are only Sam Darnold away from a Super Bowl. And make your own decision.
So like someone else would want to get some like I got you. Okay. Sure.
anyway, let's see. One of the, since we're on quarterbacks, fun fact about Jared Goff. Jared Goff's had an amazing season. As you can see, he's second in passing yards. He's also tied for, or not tied, sorry, he's got like fourth in TDs, I think. Fun fact about
TDs.
Jared Goff. How many games do you think he's played outdoors this season?
Oh wow. I don't
17
know,
game
'cause
season. How many games do you think the Lions have played outdoors?
7 and 6. I don't know.
I'm gonna say they've got what, 9 home games, probably 8 on the road. Let's go 5.
You both hit the over. They've only played 3 outdoor games all season. They've played 14 in a dome, and because they're the number 1 overall seed, and because the Super Bowl is also in a dome, if they were to run the table, they would play every remaining game in a dome. He's going to go through this season having only played. Like he's already 14 indoor games, 3 outdoor. There's a chance it'll be 17 indoor games, 3 outdoor if he goes the distance. So the question is there any concern that if he has to play outside more next season that he won't be as good? Because he was not as good in LA where they were outside, and that's not a cold weather, that's just outdoors. So maybe he just needs to be in a bubble. I think it's just a fun fact. I don't actually know how much that kind of plays into their success. I have no idea what his record was in the outdoor games. I just thought it was interesting.
That's actually a pretty fun stat.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
Yeah.
It looks like it's got to be what. I don't even know where he played outside, but that's a fun.
Three of the first 4 weeks, right?
Packers.
The Rams. These are home games, right? Wait, yeah. Oh, this doesn't.
Packers and Bears are for sure outside.
It just depends on what games are home and away. I was hoping this would show me home and away, but they don't.
Oh, and then San Francisco. So Packers, Bears, San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting stat. I don't really have any points to make off it. I just thought it was fun because we're talking about QBs.
I would Lions in a dome all day. I don't know how you don't. I mean, they're an eclectic offense. I think dome favors faster play and passing offenses. I don't know who.
They had 2 losses, right?
I don't know who beats them.
Yeah, who beat the Lions? Let's see.
The Bills beat them 48-42 in Detroit. and it looks like the Bucks beat them early in the season, 20-16 in Detroit.
Okay. So then, yeah. So they won all the outdoor games. So yeah. So I'm not making any comments about his ability to play outside. I just thought it was funny. But yeah. One last thing that I have to talk about. We keep telling people, hey, let us know what you guys want to hear us talk about on the podcast. I finally got some feedback from loyal listener Break. You know, he listens to every episode. Obviously, he's a huge fan of the show. His feedback was talk about other stuff besides football. That was his feedback for our fantasy football podcast, that we should not talk about football. So I don't know how useful that is. Although football season is wrapping up soon, so we are going to have to start talking about other stuff, and we will. But I just thought that was funny. Thought I'd share.
No, and you know, actually, I really like that advice coming from such a huge sports guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Adam would have so much to say about any other sport besides fantasy football. We should really invite him on the pod for those episodes.
All I can think about is a world where Rodgers goes back to the Vikings, and I'm drafting Rodgers in our fantasy league next year. That's all I can. So, not enough football. Not enough
Follow
football.
the full Brett Favre timeline, is what you're saying?
Is there any world that Cousins or Rodgers is the starting quarterback for the Vikings next year?
I mean,
Ooh.
I don't see how,
Kirk
unless
Cousins would be very enticing.
the only way I can see that happening is obviously their teams have to cut them, right? Which is very, very possible. But then I think those guys need to basically be of the mindset, I no longer care about the money, I just want to win. And be like, hey, I'll come play for you guys for a season for like a super cheap deal.
I mean, Rodgers
mentor.
and Cousins are getting paid ridiculous right now. They could take half and still be paid. It's like
That's what
37 million and
no, that was
45.
like hey, because of my guaranteed money that Atlanta's gonna have to pay me,
Exactly.
I'll sign with you guys for only $5 million for the season, and I'll mentor, the guy on the bench.
Or they could just take Darnold's contract and do it for 10.
Yeah. But
So,
no, I
I
don't,
mean,
I don't see that happening.
If I'm Cousins, I'm going back to Minnesota for that minimum. Give me that Russ Wilson contract. Give me the 2 point, what did you get, like 1.5 or 2.5 or whatever it is.
Yeah, we'll see. Lot to be played out. Anyway, we'll discuss how the playoffs look. We didn't really have time to go over playoff matches before. We're kind of out of time here, boys. Anything you guys want to last hits you mention before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, just real quick. No justification. One word answers. Who's winning the Super Bowl or Super Bowl matchup? Let's do Super Bowl matchup.
All right. Well, let me bring up the playoff bracket.
What do I want or what do I think?
No, just who is it gonna be? Just tell me who you think it's gonna be. Alex apparently doesn't know who's in the NFL playoffs.
No, I know. Keep in mind, I'm recording this as a video, guys. It's easier.
Oh, true.
It's easier.
Sorry, listeners.
I mean, it's funny to say even with all the injuries, but I mean, this isn't very crazy pick from Bitch, but for me, it's got to be Lions Bills, right?
Lions,
No?
Bills. Okay,
Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really prove this, but I think I told Dad week 2 I thought it was gonna be Lions Bills. It's really hard to get away from that now. So if you'd asked me week 2, it'd be Lions Bills. If you asked me now, it'd be Lions Bills. If I had to pick someone different besides Lions Bills, I might be willing to change in the NFC. I still think Bills is the team in the AFC. In the NFC, I might be willing to change off Lions because of all their injuries. The problem is the team that I'm most likely to switch to would be the Eagles, and I can't do that either because I don't know if
I'm with you,
play.
Alex. I'm with you. My
So
second choice would be Eagles Chiefs. So I'm with you.
if I knew Hurts was healthy and like here's the not just whether or not he's going to play. Like let's assume he clears concussion protocol. He hadn't played football in 3 weeks, guys. That's a big deal. Like for a quarterback, it's one thing for a linebacker or whatever to come back and there's a little rust, but this is a guy who has to be involved in every single offensive play, and he hasn't played football in 3 weeks, not even practice because he had a concussion. He can't even practice.
Yeah.
I mean, like
I actually like the Eagles out of the NFC. They would be my pick. The AFC is a three-way coin flip for me between the Bills, Ravens, and Chiefs. I think the Bills to me would be the favorite. I would not be too surprised to see the Ravens or Chiefs come out of it. The reason I can't see the actually, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. The Bills and the Ravens have to play each other. So all roads basically mean if the Bills make it to the Super Bowl, Bills have to go Ravens, Chiefs.
They don't reseed
Broncos,
anymore? It's on seeding? No? They're gone?
They do, but the Chiefs are guaranteed the lower seed. So if the Ravens win as a 3 seed, the Chiefs will play whatever the lower seed is.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh,
So
so it'll be Chiefs
the
Bills.
Bills and if Bills and Ravens win, it's a guaranteed matchup. So the AFC is Bills, Ravens, no matter what next week if they win. So if the Bills win, they have to beat the Broncos, the Ravens, and the Chiefs most likely to get through. If the Ravens win, they have to beat the Steelers, the Bills, and the Chiefs to get through. The Chiefs don't have to play anybody, then have to play the winner of the Chargers, Texans, and then Bills, Ravens. So I'm gonna go Eagles, Chiefs.
Yeah, it's just
The
it's
AFC
just
is
hard for me to it's just hard for me to
wildly
pick the Ravens because
incredible to think about.
Lamar just has not done well in the playoffs. He just hasn't. Like period. End of sentence. Like yeah, he's a great regular season quarterback, but he just hasn't done well in the playoffs. So it's hard. Like as good as he's been, I just can't pick the Ravens to be a contender until he does something otherwise. And I think the Chiefs were actively bad this year and somehow still managed to win 15 games, 16 games.
I don't like the Ravens and some of their losses this year. That's what bothers me is I
I
can't
mean,
trust the Ravens when if you don't have a defense that can get you a stop. You don't need a good defense. Like don't get me wrong, you don't even need an average. You just need a defense that can get a stop when you need it. And I don't think the Ravens have that defense.
All right,
Like you're
one
gonna
last
have
question.
to
These
win
are
one
supposed to be
time.
one word answers, and we didn't
Yeah,
do
sorry.
that. So, one last question, one word answer, even though we're not going to do that. Which team would be the most surprising to make the Super Bowl from each conference for you?
oh,
Like right
Rams?
now, or like I'd say the Vikings still because like people are used to Darnold being good, but like before the season, if you said the Vikings, people would be like, "You're crazy."
No, so yeah, I mean right now, like now that we've seen the whole season, not from the beginning of the year,
Okay.
but like yeah, going into the playoffs, who would be the biggest surprise for you to make the Super Bowl?
Anyone in
I
the
think a
AFC not
Rams
named
charge.
Chiefs? Sorry.
Yeah, Rams Chargers to me would be the most wild matchup just because I don't think either one of them are actually good.
I'm gonna have to go. Who is the last seed in the AFC? Probably the Broncos. So I'm gonna
The
pick the
Broncos.
Broncos. Yeah.
See, I would say Texans, even though they're the 4 seed. I think that'd be the most surprising team out of all these teams to make it. Uh, NFC is a lot harder. I think everyone in the NFC is a potential contender, but I guess I'll say Commanders just because they got the rookie QB. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up
You
there.
think they're all contenders? Wow, that's wild.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
do.
wild statement.
I do. I think the NFC is wide
It'd
open.
be interesting. The
That
Rams
is
win. The
so
Rams win this
loaded.
week. Who are they playing? Uh,
Vikings.
Rams.
Rams playing the
Yeah, if the
Vikes.
Rams beat the Vikings, and it's Goff for Stafford. That'd be nice.
That'd be great. All right,
You
boys.
think they're all contenders and you want to watch those games? You want to watch Rams, Vikings, Commanders, Bucks? I just have zero
Yeah,
interest
dude,
in those
are you,
matchups.
you don't want to see Commanders Bucks? Are you crazy? That's gonna be so entertaining.
No, because whoever loses that round is guaranteed to lose the next round. Or wins that round. I just, yeah. I mean, okay.
You're
I
putting
get
a
what
lot
you're
of
saying,
faith
man.
in the Detroit Lions who haven't won since like the 50s. All right.
They are
No,
one of the
I
most
get it.
stacked
I get
teams
it.
I've seen,
No,
Alex.
yeah, they are, but they're the Detroit Lions, guys. Like,
Sure. Goff has one bad game. Well, I mean, Goff has the potential to have a losing game, not just a bad game, is what I meant to say. But I guess what Vinny's saying is he sees the Lions and the Eagles just so much farther ahead than the rest, whereas like the AFC, I guess, is more middle heavy because the Chiefs and Bills aren't so top heavy. Is that what you're trying to say, Vinny?
Yeah, yeah. I just don't think it's that close. But anyways, I know Alex is trying to wrap up. I do think we should pick up this conversation, uh, and then I want to discuss MVPs if we do one next week as well. I think that'd be a very fun
yeah, no,
conversation.
I want to keep this thing going even after football season. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I wanted to wrap it up just because like people will complain when our episodes go too long. But yeah, just a few more thoughts on what I was saying because we can. I think I can see all these teams in the NFC winning football games, whereas like there's a lot of teams that like I can't see the Broncos, the Chargers, the Texans, or the Steelers doing anything. I really can't, and I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are as good as their record. So I think it's kind of a two-horse race here. Whereas here, I think there's a lot could happen because like yeah, the Lions are quote unquote the best team, but they're the Detroit Lions, right? Like one of the best quarterbacks in football this year was Baker Mayfield, but it's Baker Mayfield, guys. You know what I mean? The Commanders are fun to watch. They can score a ton of points. They've won on these crazy Hail Mary plays. You know what I mean? The Rams, like I keep saying, Stafford just gets hot when it matters. He plays well when the games matter. You know, Darnold was terrible last week, but prior to last week, he'd been really good. So I just think there's a lot going on. You know, the Eagles, they should be good, but Hurts is hurt. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the NFC is a lot more wide open because of the chaos factor. Than
In
the
a
AFC.
in a year that Mitch wins DoD, I hope it's a Baker Russ Wilson Super Bowl just so I can give him the bird and just say you're just Just straight Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan to the Super Bowl with Russ Wilson
Steelers
and George
Broncos
Pickens.
AFC Championship.
Steelers Broncos AFC, just Bucks Vikings NFC, and then it's just
I have one real quick, one word answer. Which winning a Super Bowl for all these teams, who would it do for, who would it do the most for? Which QB? Like, whose career would benefit the most from winning a Super Bowl?
I mean, besides the Vikings, because then Darnold really would get paid.
It's probably the
um,
answer is probably Darnold. I don't know what
Well,
it
no,
probably might do
that's
for
just from a money standpoint.
Lamar's career if he
I'm
wins.
gonna say Lamar and Jaden Daniels would be my two.
No, for
In
career,
each
I'm
conference.
gonna say Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts is always going to be looked at as a running quarterback. They have a great running line. They just run the ball. He can't pass.
So the
But
Eagles,
but
Ravens have the most to lose.
if you win a Super Bowl, I think that changes the narrative. So like when you look at all these guys, like Baker Mayfield's very successful. He's in all these commercials. Like he's fun. He's entertaining. I think he's fine. Jaden Daniels is a rookie. Just going team by team. Stafford's
I
won
don't
a
really do anything
championship.
for Stafford.
Sam
Yeah.
Darnold's
It's
going to
not
get paid. Like I was joking, but Sam Darnold's going to get paid this year either way. It'd be good for Love, but like Love is the QB of the future. Green Bay is really good about just rolling out QBs. I think he's fine. Rookie QB, he's great.
Russ.
I mean, I guess it would do something for Herbert because Herbert kind of went from really touted to really terrible. So I'll say Herbert maybe. No, Russ has already won one, right? And he would have had two if not for the
Sure.
worst play call in NFL history. Um,
Sure.
Lamar's had two league MVPs, potentially a third coming. Obviously, we know that he doesn't need it. So yeah, as far as like who it would do the most for
Ooh.
career wise, like I think career and legacy are two different words, right? So like for their career here in the now, like their career longevity, how they're looked at, I think it would do more for Hurts or Herbert than anyone else.
I don't know if Lamar and Josh Allen never win a Super Bowl, their legacy is tainted big time. I don't
That's
think
what
we'll
I'm
talk
getting
about
at.
Right.
it
So
as much.
well, yeah. So again, I think I just interpreted the word career different than legacy. If you're asking about legacy, then yes, it's different.
Or who's winning the Super Bowl most important for? I don't know. I guess you can do either one interpretation, but whose playoffs is this the most important for? Is what I'm trying to ask in a bad way of asking.
Lamar
I
and
think
Allen to me.
I think my setup question is I think it's got to be Josh Allen. Yeah.
I'm well. In that case, I'm going to say the Eagles, and not just because it hurts, but also because of Saquon. Because they made the decision to rest Saquon and not have him go for it.
Interesting.
If the Eagles lose to Green Bay, which is very possible, by the way, like especially if Hurts doesn't
Everyone's
play,
going to hate Sirianni.
if the Eagles go out there and lose to Green Bay,
Yeah.
they're going to hate the organization, the
Yeah.
fan base is going to hate Sirianni. They're going to be mad
Yeah.
at Saquon for not going it. They're going to blame Hurts for having gotten hurt. Like, I think the Eagles have the most to lose this weekend.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
All right, boys,
Yeah,
we're going to call it
agreed.
there. We'll discuss more next time. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's so great being back. And peace out, everybody.
See ya.